I think royal duty is extremely important. I think it's part of the fabric of what the royal family and any future monarch has, and it's something that
I commit myself to serve you all, King, country, and Commonwealth. God save the King.
We're looking roughly 50 solutions over the next 10 years that can really turn the tide and really change the way we deal and tackle with environmental challenges. Then it would have been a success.
Prince William is no longer the quiet force operating behind palace doors. In recent months, he has emerged as a commanding presence on the royal stage, taking on key engagements, voicing bold opinions, and redefining what it means to be a future king. Once overshadowed by his father, King Charles, William is now leading with quiet strength and unmistakable authority. His vision for the monarchy is modern, resolute, and deeply personal, and it's capturing the attention of the world. But no one could have anticipated his latest move. In a moment that stunned royal insiders and ignited waves of emotion behind palace walls, Prince William made a decision so unexpected it left both King Charles and Queen Camilla visibly shaken. Sources close to the family say tears were shed, a rare and raw response from the monarch and his consort.
It is my view that the deceitful way the interview was obtained substantially influenced what my mother said.
Prince William's evolution.
It's pretty rich coming from a ginger, so I'm quite happy to take that on this one.
Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, has always been seen as the quiet heir, living in the shadow of his father, King Charles. For years, he stood on the sidelines, dutifully attending royal events and supporting the monarchy, never fully stepping into the spotlight. In many ways, William seemed content with his role, letting his father and the older generation define the path forward for the royal family. But recently, something has changed. Something profound.
Well, as I say, over 30 years, tried to find ways, meeting the particular needs and challenges that people face.
No longer content with merely fulfilling the traditional duties of a prince, William has emerged as a powerful figure within the monarchy. He's no longer just a passive observer, but a key player in shaping its future. William's evolution has been both subtle and dramatic. Behind closed doors, his determination to bring the monarchy into a new era became clear. He understands the need for change, not just to preserve the monarchy's relevance, but to align it with the modern world. William is no longer a mere participant in the royal pageantry. He is actively guiding the monarchy into uncharted territory, preparing it for a future that blends tradition with innovation. Now, let's take a look at what triggered his new movement and passion. Keep watching.
We're looking roughly 50 solutions over the next 10 years that can really turn the tide and really change the way we deal and tackle with environmental challenges. Then it would have been a success.
The royal meeting. The breaking point. It was a typical royal meeting at Clarence House, an event that would seem just like any other to those outside the palace walls. But this time, there was an electric charge in the air. Prince William, with his ever-steady presence, stood before a room full of veteran royal advisors. These are men and women who had witnessed decades of royal drama and seen the monarchy weather numerous storms. They were seasoned, prepared for anything, but none of them could have predicted what would unfold in those few tense moments. As the meeting began, the air was thick with anticipation. William, calm yet resolute, made it clear from the outset that he wasn't there simply to carry out his duties as the heir to the throne. He was there to make a statement, to outline his vision for the future of the monarchy. The message was stark and unapologetic. Change was coming, and it would not be delayed. The words that followed were not just about royal duties or ceremonial functions. No, William's words struck at the heart of what the monarchy stood for, what it needed to become in a rapidly changing world. He spoke of the need for transparency, for evolution, for the monarchy to reconnect with the people it was meant to serve. This wasn't a plea for incremental change. It was a declaration of transformation. He made it clear that no one, not even the closest members of his family, would be exempt from the changes he envisioned. The room fell silent as William's voice echoed in the space. There was a steady determination in his tone, but beneath it, those who knew him well could hear something deeper, a quiet, simmering intensity that had been building for years. It was the weight of the years, the burden of his mother's legacy.
20th anniversary year feels like a good time to remember, all the good things about her
and the complex relationships he carried with those around him, especially with King Charles and Camilla.
But we have been brought closer because of the circumstances as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You are, uniquely bonded because of what we've been through.
As William finished speaking, the silence in the room was deafening. King Charles, a man who had long hoped for a time when his son would step up to lead, found himself unable to hold back his emotions. It wasn't just disappointment. It was the realization that his son's vision for the monarchy had eclipsed his own. His long-held hopes for a smoother, more traditional transition were suddenly and irrevocably challenged. His composure slipped, and in front of the gathered advisors, tears began to slip down his face. Queen Camilla, too, was visibly affected. Known for her composed and controlled demeanor, she momentarily let her guard down. The woman who had spent years in the public eye, managing her image with grace, now sat before her husband, her face pale and eyes glistening with unshed tears. For a brief moment, she showed the world what few had ever seen: the vulnerability of a woman who had built her life in the shadow of scandal, now confronted with the shifting tides of a new era. As William spoke, Camilla's strength faltered. She wiped a tear from her cheek, trying to regain her composure. But the moment was too powerful, too personal for even her to mask. What was it that William had said to bring such an emotional response from two of the most powerful figures in the United Kingdom? What decision had he made that threatened to tear apart the very fabric of the monarchy? Keep watching to find out. Prince William's vision, a changing monarchy.
We've all grown up, differently to our other generations, and I very much feel if I can do it myself, I want to do it myself.
Prince William's speech at Clarence House was more than just a reaction to the changing times. It was a profound statement of his own vision for the future of the British monarchy. In those few moments, he laid out a roadmap for a modernized royal family, one that wasn't just about tradition, but about evolution, service, and most importantly, connecting with the people in a way the monarchy hadn't before. For decades, the British monarchy had operated within a rigid, time-honored framework. It was steeped in tradition and royal protocol, with every action carefully calculated to maintain a sense of stability and continuity.
Waving to the thousands of people who are thronging the Mall, who have braved the rain and are here to witness an historic moment.
William's words, however, signaled a stark departure from that tradition. He wasn't just talking about ceremonial changes or updates to royal duties. He was talking about a transformation that touched the very essence of what it meant to be a royal in the modern world. At the heart of William's vision was the idea that the monarchy could no longer stand above the people it was meant to serve. He spoke of a monarchy that needed to be more transparent, more humble, and more in tune with the needs of its citizens. His vision was one where the royal family didn't just reside in the lofty halls of Buckingham Palace, but actively engaged with the everyday concerns of the nation. This wasn't a monarchy that remained distant and aloof. It was one that actively listened, one that worked alongside its people, not above them. The idea of a monarchy that could evolve with the times was something William felt deeply. He had watched as the world around him changed rapidly, and with it, the public's expectations of the royal family. William's words were filled with conviction about the necessity of leadership. He wasn't simply advocating for change for the sake of it. His vision was a practical one where the monarchy could be reshaped to ensure that it would continue to thrive in a world where public trust was more critical than ever. He spoke about the need for transparency in how royal duties were performed and how decisions were made. He emphasized the importance of the royal family remaining grounded, focused on service, and not just on maintaining its position within the hierarchy of power. Now, does the changing monarch have anything to do with King Charles's wife, Camilla? Let's find out. The personal struggles, William's complex relationship with Camilla.
We do know that Camilla had told friends at this point.
At the heart of William's vision for a changing monarchy is a deeply personal struggle. A struggle that extends beyond royal duties and public expectations. His relationship with Queen Camilla, his stepmother, has long been a complicated and painful one. For William, Camilla was never just another member of the royal family. She symbolized something far more profound: the rupture of his family, the destruction of his mother's happiness, and a personal betrayal he could never fully reconcile. From a young age, William was thrust into the emotional turmoil that surrounded his parents' tumultuous marriage. He witnessed the pain his mother, Princess Diana, endured as her marriage to Prince Charles fell apart, largely due to his father's relationship with Camilla. Diana's heartache was raw and evident, often reflected in the quiet sobs William heard late at night, behind the closed doors of their Kensington Palace home. He couldn't escape the image of his mother, vulnerable and heartbroken, while his father's affection seemed increasingly reserved for Camilla, a woman who, in William's eyes, had caused irreparable harm to his family. That image of his mother, sitting alone in her room, wondering why her husband no longer loved her, was seared into William's memory. It wasn't just a moment of sadness. It was the moment when he realized that the love he had once imagined his parents shared was no longer there. Instead, he saw his father's gaze soften for Camilla, a woman who had, in his mind, invaded their family and torn it apart. The tragic death of Princess Diana in 1997 only intensified these feelings.
Those shocking allegations about Princess Diana's death. Authorities now reviewing the new and sensational claim that she was actually murdered by the British government.
The loss of his mother was devastating for William, and the events that followed. His father's marriage to Camilla and her rise to prominence within the royal family only deepened the wound. William couldn't help but feel that Camilla was a constant reminder of everything he had lost. She wasn't just a stepmother to him. She was the symbol of the life he would never have, the family that was shattered beyond repair. Now, as heir, he had to do something about this long-bottled emotions. He had to see Camilla's struggle for what she lacks. Camilla's fall from grace, the shift in power. As Prince William began to speak about the future of the monarchy, it became clear that the royal family's power dynamics were about to change in ways no one could have anticipated. William's speech, once a simple announcement of his vision for the future, soon turned into a quiet yet powerful declaration that would shake the monarchy to its core. Among the most profound consequences of this speech was the gradual, almost unnoticed, fall from grace of Queen Camilla, a woman who, for years, had fought to find her place in the royal family and had, for all intents and purposes, been firmly ensconced beside King Charles as a stabilizing force.
This is also a time of change for my family. I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla.
But as William outlined his plans for the monarchy's future, Camilla's name was conspicuously absent. In a speech that touched on the need for transparency, modernization, and shared leadership, William outlined the creation of a new Royal Advisory Council. Princess Catherine, Prince Edward, and other members of the royal family were all given expanded roles, taking on more responsibility within the family's duties. But Camilla's role in this new era was never mentioned. There were no acknowledgements of her position, no plans for her expanded duties, not even a nod to her efforts as queen consort. It was as if she had been quietly erased from the monarchy's future. This omission wasn't just a mistake from William. It was a powerful, almost unspoken declaration. For the first time in years, Camilla's position as queen seemed confusing, overshadowed by William's bold move to reshape the royal family. It was now clear that William's vision for the monarchy didn't include Camilla in any prominent way. The silence surrounding her role spoke volumes, signaling that her influence was beginning to wane. What followed was a dramatic moment that no one could have predicted. As William's speech continued, Camilla, always the composed and resilient figure, began to visibly falter. Her face drained of color, and her eyes fluttered. Those in the room watched in stunned silence as she slumped forward in her seat, fainting from the emotional and physical strain of the moment.
And feeling that fear every single day. And then I suppose they think to themselves, well, maybe that there is a way out.
The royal medical team rushed to her side, and King Charles, visibly distressed, called for help. The room, once filled with the weight of William's words, was now immersed in a crisis that no one had foreseen. In the wake of the incident, the palace went into full damage control. Behind closed doors, advisors scrambled to manage the fallout. Some royal insiders believed that King Charles had been blindsided by his son's bold actions, while others whispered that he had been made aware of the plan in advance, but couldn't quite grasp how William would execute it. Regardless of the behind-the-scenes maneuvering, one thing was certain: Camilla's position in the royal family had been irrevocably altered. The emotional fallout from that day was felt by people in the palace. Camilla, once the central figure in the royal family's narrative, was now being overshadowed by the rising influence of William and Catherine. It wasn't just about the titles they held or the public image they projected. It was about the power they commanded, the connection they had with the people, and the strength of the vision they shared for the monarchy's future. As William continued to step into his new role, his leadership became more pronounced, while Camilla's presence gradually faded into the background. Her schedule was cleared, her public appearances became increasingly rare, and the once powerful queen consort now found herself sidelined in the court of public opinion. The palace, once a place of regal tradition, was now a house divided, a house where the old ways of doing things were being quietly swept away by the force of William's vision. The aftermath: Camilla's collapse and the family's response. The aftermath of that pivotal royal meeting at Clarence House sent shockwaves through the royal family. What began as a carefully orchestrated speech by Prince William, one meant to lay out his vision for a modern monarchy, quickly spiraled into an emotional crisis that no one saw coming. Camilla, the Queen, had collapsed in the middle of the event, a physical manifestation of the emotional toll William's words had inflicted on her. As she was rushed out of the room by the royal medical team, the entire atmosphere in the palace shifted from a carefully maintained sense of tradition and composure to one of chaos and uncertainty. For those present in the room, it was a moment that no one could forget. Camilla, who had long been the pillar of stability beside King Charles, had faltered. Her collapse wasn't just a result of physical exhaustion or stress. It symbolized the deep emotional and psychological impact of William's decision. In a single moment, her role in the monarchy, once seen as central and secure, was thrown into question. The reality of her diminishing influence became impossible to ignore. As King Charles frantically called for help, the weight of the moment became clear. His wife, the woman he had married after years of public scrutiny and emotional turbulence, was visibly shaken by the power of his son's words. For a man who had long hoped for a seamless transition of power to his son, the reality of that shift was now undeniable. The monarchy, as he had known it, was changing, and not in the way he had envisioned. His wife's collapse, far from just a personal crisis, symbolized the unraveling of everything he had worked for within the royal family.
In this purpose, I know that I shall be upheld by the affection and loyalty of the peoples whose sovereign I have been called upon to be.
Behind palace doors, the royal advisors scrambled to handle the fallout. Some insiders believed that Charles had been blindsided by William's bold actions. Others suggested that he had been aware of the impending shift, but was shocked by how quickly it all unfolded. Regardless of the whispers and speculations, one thing was certain: Camilla's role in the monarchy was no longer secure. Meanwhile, in the royal household, King Charles appeared drained. The stress of the situation, combined with his ongoing health concerns, seemed to weigh heavily on him. Though he tried to maintain his composure in public, those closest to him saw the strain. His wife's collapse had left a deep emotional scar, one that went beyond the physical care she required. This was a moment of reckoning for the monarchy, and Charles, already dealing with the pressures of his own reign, now found himself caught between the desire to hold on to tradition and the reality of a changing monarchy. For the royal family, the aftermath of that day was just the beginning. The shift in power was palpable, and no one, not even the most seasoned royal advisors, knew exactly where it would lead. William's quiet revolution, the monarchy's future.
As my grandmother said when she was crowned, coronations are a declaration of our hopes for the future. And I know she's up there, fondly keeping an eye on us.
As the dust began to settle after Camilla's public collapse, a stark truth became apparent. The monarchy was no longer operating as it once had. Prince William's actions, bold and decisive, had set in motion a quiet revolution. While the royal family tried to maintain an appearance of unity, behind palace walls, a shift was unmistakably underway. And it was William who was at the center of it all, asserting his leadership in ways that would redefine the monarchy's role in the modern world. His speech at Clarence House had not just been a public declaration of change, it had been a declaration of his authority. William's voice, steady and resolute, had outlined a vision for the future that no one in the royal family could ignore. It wasn't simply about reforming the monarchy to better suit contemporary times. It was about reshaping the very fabric of what it meant to be royal, stripping away the layers of tradition that no longer served a purpose and making way for a monarchy that could actively engage with its people. For William, the monarchy had to be more than just a symbol of stability. It had to be a living, breathing entity that connected with the people it served. The rigid, top-down structure of the royal family, where decisions were made behind closed doors and handed down from the monarch to the rest of the family, no longer worked in the fast-paced, transparent world of today.
You have been brought closer because of the circumstances as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You are, uniquely bonded because of what we've been through.
Yeah.
William understood that for the monarchy to survive and thrive, it needed to evolve, to be more accountable, and to truly listen to the needs of the public. And he wasn't simply talking about symbolic gestures or minor reforms. William's vision was far more radical than that. He called for a new royal advisory council, one that would involve members of the royal family, such as Princess Catherine and Prince Edward, in taking on expanded roles and responsibilities. This was a move toward decentralizing power within the royal household, bringing more people into the decision-making process and giving them a larger role in the family's public duties. But perhaps the most significant shift was William's quiet assumption of a semi-regent role. With King Charles increasingly occupied by health concerns, William began taking on more and more of the crown's day-to-day responsibilities. While Charles still held the formal title of king, it was clear to those inside and outside the palace that the future of the monarchy was already being shaped by William. His growing influence was undeniable. He was not just the heir apparent, he was already exercising leadership in a way that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. In the aftermath of that speech, William's growing influence was not just an abstract concept, it was tangible. He began attending more diplomatic meetings, representing the monarchy at major public events, and taking on more responsibility in both domestic and international affairs. It was as though a quiet power transfer had already occurred, with William at the helm leading the charge for a new era of the monarchy. Even royal insiders couldn't deny it. William was now the face of the future, the one shaping the monarchy's direction. Behind the scenes, King Charles, though still king in title, found himself more and more on the periphery of decision-making. The weight of his age and health struggles, combined with his son's rising star, made it increasingly difficult for him to maintain his previous role as the primary decision-maker. The final verdict: what's next for Camilla? As Prince William's influence within the royal family solidified, a burning question lingered in the air. What would become of Camilla?
I'm 75 now, and I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there.
Once the Queen consort, Camilla had fought for her place beside King Charles after years of public scrutiny and personal trials. However, as the monarchy shifted under William's leadership, her future seemed increasingly uncertain. For years, she had been the woman standing next to Charles, representing the stability of the monarchy. But now, the monarchy's future was being shaped without her at the center. William's speech, which so clearly laid out his vision for a new, modernized royal family, had made it abundantly clear that Camilla was not part of this new world. While he embraced change and transparency, there was no space in his plans for Camilla's expanded role. Her name was absent from any mention of future royal responsibilities. The lack of acknowledgement wasn't just a minor omission. It was a deliberate, silent declaration that her influence in the royal family had diminished significantly. The question of Camilla's future became a topic of intense speculation. Would she continue to support Charles in a diminished capacity, or would she retreat from the public eye altogether? The media and royal experts began to examine the implications of William's rise to power, and the omission of Camilla from the new royal structure seemed to signal that her time at the forefront was coming to an end. Public sentiment was divided. While some felt sympathy for Camilla, recognizing the hardships she had faced throughout her life, others saw her fading role as the inevitable consequence of years of power struggles and public rejection. In private, behind palace doors, the atmosphere was charged with tension. King Charles, already grappling with his health and the emotional strain of his wife's collapse, was forced to confront the reality that his son was not only the heir to the throne, but the future king in both title and action. Charles had long hoped for a smooth transition of power, But William's swift rise to prominence made it clear that the monarchy was evolving faster than he had anticipated. As the royal family adjusted to these changes, the question remained: how would Camilla fit into this new world? Would she step aside gracefully, accepting her reduced role, or would she push back against the tides of change? The answer, for now, remained uncertain. One thing, however, was clear. The monarchy was on the cusp of a dramatic transformation, and Camilla's place in it was rapidly becoming a footnote in a story that was being written without her. The future of the British monarchy seemed to be defined by the new generation, by William and Catherine. While Charles continued to wear the crown, it was William's leadership that was shaping the future. What we've witnessed over the past months is more than a series of events. It's the dawn of a new era for the British monarchy. Prince William, once the quiet heir to the throne, has now taken center stage as the leader of the royal family, shaping its future with a vision rooted in transparency, humility, and modernity. For King Charles and Queen Camilla, the change has been undeniable. As William's influence continues to grow, the royal family finds itself at a crossroads. The monarchy is changing, and the question remains: who will lead it into the next chapter? The future is now in William's hands, and the world is watching closely.